Hello again, I am Blunty, and the iPad came out today, the new iPad, the iPad without a number. It's not the iPad 3, it's not the iPad HD, it's just the new iPad, which is kind of a little middling and confusing to some, but then again, the MacBooks don't have numbers at the end of their names either, so who cares? But I'm going to review this, but I'm not going to go all in detail about it, because basically it's a lot like the other iPads that came before it. It shares a lot of the DNA in there. So I'm going to talk about the two things that have changed that make a real difference. Well, three things, but two of those things are kind of tied together. Those things that are tied together are the brand new screen, which is Apple's Retina display. It's super high def. And to go along with that, they've had to create a quad-core GPU, graphics processing chip, to power it up, because the old chip just wouldn't have been able to push that many pixels around fast enough. So those two things go together, and I'm telling you now, it makes a huge difference. I'm talking huge difference. It is just an amazing screen. Perhaps the most amazing screen I've ever laid eyes on, full stop, on any device. It is so crisp, so clean, so bright and colourful. Apps like Comixology, if you read comics on it, it makes a huge difference in the readability of, sometimes kind of small text. I often have to find myself zooming in to read smaller text, and if you get it in portrait mode, it's even harder. But with this screen, the high def, the Retina display thingy, it's so much easier. It makes reading comics on it brilliant. If you're looking at pictures on it, if you've got your photographic portfolio on there and you're showing clients and stuff, it's huge difference. It looks so good. And the other big difference is, of course, they've upgraded the camera that's on the back. I pointed the wrong end, didn't I? It's on that side, the camera on the back. And they've upgraded that. Not as far as what's in the 4S. I don't know why they didn't just jam in the camera that's in the 4S. They've obviously got the access to the parts. I don't know why. But they've got a similar kind of lens system in there. It's a 5-element autofocus lens system, and it's a 5-megapixel camera. And on top of 5-megapixel stills, it does 1080p video now as well. And it's a huge leap up from what the iPad used to be. The camera on the iPad 2, useless. It was literally useless. It was so awful. I did not use it for anything. I could not use it for anything. I couldn't excuse myself using it for anything at all. Not even a bugger about with it. It was so bad. But this is a different beastie altogether. So I got home, I set up the iPad, I went out this morning, I joined the line, I waited for 2 hours and blah, 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 blah. And then I got home, set it up, and then I went out for a walk and decided to test out the camera, and this is the kind of footage I came back with. So then, as you can see, a world of difference between the iPads. Still not as good as what you get out of the iPhone 4 or 4S, for instance. Those are both better imaging chips altogether, but it's a world of difference. Indoors, it's a little bit muddy, a little bit grainy. You get some noise coming in, but if you throw a lot of light at it, for example, if you're outdoors or in a well-lit indoor situation, it's a huge difference. Everything becomes crisp and clean and clear and sharp, and motion looks good, and there's not very much smearing or anything else going on. You do get a bit of a problem with blooming, like the highlights will sort of glow and bloom a bit, but once you get used to the quirks of the camera, once you get used to how it likes to be used and where the sun should be in position to you and everything to get the best out of it, and I spent a couple of hours and it was, I got used to it fairly quickly, you can get some really good looking footage out of it. And I mean, footage I would use in a proper production, if I had no other camera with me, if my dedicated camera was dead and maybe my phone was running out of battery, or the memory was full, or for whatever reason I couldn't use that, or if I was using two different cameras, I shoot something with the iPhone and shoot a second angle with the iPad. There is a whole bunch of reasons why an iPad camera comes in handy, and a lot of people out there are poo-pooing it. Oh, why would you need a camera on a tablet? You look stupid holding it up. You look ridiculous holding this big thing up, well, look. It comes down to this. I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And the fact that I have it, even if I don't need it that often, it needs to be something that I can rely on to get a decent shot out of, because, a lot of stuff, when you're shooting, you only get one chance to get it. And you need a camera that you can rely on. And in the case of the iPad 2, it's good. It's not great. It's not spectacular, as you can see. It's nowhere near going to be blowing anyone out of the water. But It is certainly good enough, and once you start sort of working with its strengths, you can get some really good looking stuff out of it. And I was having a blast shooting with it. I was quite impressed with it, especially outdoors in bright sun. It just becomes a whole different beast to what it is indoors, really. Stills are the same kind of story. Stills look even better. You get less of the problem with the blowing out, I've found. But everything is nice and colourful. It's crisp and clear. The images are relatively free of noise in most circumstances. You can sort of lock your focus and exposure like you can on the iPhone too, which is really handy because it's an autofocus camera, which means you can also get some nice little macro shots and things like that. The stabilization isn't anywhere near as good as Apple claim it is, and it's the same for the iPhone 4S actually. The demo shots, oh look how we're built-in stabilization, you can walk with it and it looks steady. Well, yes and no. All in all, taken on the whole, it's a pretty decent camera. Like I said before, it's good, not great, but good, and certainly good enough for the types of stuff it's going to be put towards, taking images of the kids at the beach, or taking a photo or a product for a blog post, or if you're in an event, sort of snapping something off and posting it straight away, because that's another advantage of that. You got that big screen, big app, so it's great for creating content for the web. When you're making a blog post or anything, it's so much easier to do it on the iPad with a big keyboard and big screen, lots of real estate, than it is on the iPhone. So you can take a decent photo on that, instead of having to take it on your phone, then transfer it to the iPad, then make the blog post, and then upload it, and it's all a whole rigmarole. So there's a ton of reasons that it makes sense about having a decent camera on something as relatively cumbersome as a 10-inch tablet to take photos with. Because, you do look stupid wandering around trying to take photos with this. And I did get some funny looks, but, no one was like, ooh, what a weirdo. They were just saying, oh, what's he doing? And who cares what strangers think, really? But so in the end, brilliant screen. The graphics performance is great. It's so slick and so smooth, and it's everything that was great about the iPad 2. And I use my iPad all the time. From the first thing I wake up in the morning, the last thing I put down at night, it's the iPad. And it's definitely worth the upgrade. If you've got the original iPad and it's time for upgrade, definitely upgrade. It's going to be a huge leap forward. If you've got an iPad 2 and it's still working perfectly for you, maybe consider whether the upgrade is worth it. If you use the camera a lot, and if that screen real estate is important to you, like if you show off a lot of pictures and videos and stuff like that for your work or hobby or whatever, then yes. But the leap forward isn't quite that big, so you got to weigh it up carefully. The reason I upgraded is because, well, one, I do stuff like this, so having the latest and greatest gear is handy for testing and reviews and bits and pieces. And you guys obviously want to know what my opinion is, because I know you're going to review it, you're going to do a video. Yeah, okay, apparently I am. But if I didn't do this sort of stuff, and if my iPad 2 didn't have a crack in the screen, which is one of the other main reasons I rushed out on day one to grab one, I might have sat on it a little longer, maybe. But all that said, I am so happy. I'm no buyer's remorse, not even close to buy. I can't even see the town that buyer's remorse lives in from where I am right now. I am so happy with the new iPad. It is just a really slick piece of gear. On paper, it's a little bit heavier than the previous iPad 2. And on paper it seems like you would notice it, but if you hold them next to each other you can notice it. It definitely feels significantly heavier. That's because the battery is 70% larger. You still get 10 hours out of it, it just needs to be 70% larger because it's driving all those huge, numerous pixels, and many pixels, lots of pixels. Anyway, so there you go, that's my rambling thoughts on the new iPad, the one without a number, the third one, really. Sorry I didn't write anything down, so it didn't flow as well as some of the other stuff. But, some of you guys like it when I ramble anyway. Anyway, I am Blunty. Thanks for watching. I will catch you next time. And, yeah, drop into a store and check one of these out if you're even remotely interested, because it looks good.